Community Development.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I have something new, I guess, that was given to me this evening. I don't believe any of you received this yet. There was a public hearing on June 23rd, 2022 with the Massillon Board of Zoning Appeals. And the applicant was Jason Welch regarding a vacant lot parcel number 603098 Woodruff Avenue Northwest. There were 3 variances. Since I'm just looking at this very quickly, the applicant would like to build a new 2-story with a loft single-family dwelling on a vacant parcel, which is zone R1, and is requesting the following 3 variances from section 1177.01 of the Massillon City Ordinances. Variance request number 1, the required minimum lot size width to erect a single-family dwelling is 65 feet. This lot has a size width of 50 feet. The applicant is requesting a minimum lot size width variance of 15 feet. The second variance request number 2, the required front yard setback is 25 feet. Applicant would like to be 21 feet from the front property line. A front yard variance of 4 feet is being requested. In variance request number 3, the required side lot setback is 8 feet. Applicant would like to be 4 feet from the left side property line. A side yard variance of 4 feet is being requested. All other setback requirements will be met. I believe the Massillon Board of Zoning approved these variances. And I have in front of me 3 individuals that are hereby appeal the decision of the Massillon Board of Zoning Appeals approving their variances requested regarding the above referenced property rendered on June 23rd, 2022 in the above referenced manner. So anyone from administration would like to speak on this variance this evening? And if not, Mr. Jim Johnson first. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Evening, Council. Jill was exactly right in her reading of this, and there'll be minutes for your next meeting on this variance from the board. If I do recall, variance 2 in our minutes, you'll see did not need to be granted. The owner of the lot figured out, and we figured out at the zoning board, that we could get the house far enough back off the street. So I believe when the minutes come out, and I don't want to do that without the minutes in front of me, that you'll see that variance 2 was removed from these requests. So we did only grant variance 1 and 3 at that point in time. And there were also some stipulations from code enforcement to these variances being approved, and the occupant of the lot has called and said that he's ready for a partial reinspection on those stipulations that we placed on there due to violations being on the vacant lot from code enforcement prior to the zoning hearing. So we will probably follow up on that tomorrow or Thursday at that point, but the board, this is no different than us granting these type of variances for any other home in Massillon. We've granted them for Ryan, we've granted them for other people building homes, we've granted them for habitat. And the house is going to solve a multitude of problems up there. As far as the vacant lot, it's going to solve the occupant's problems that lives on Lincoln Way, of him driving through the lot to exit his property, parking vehicles on a vacant residential lot in a residential neighborhood. And it's just going to solve a multitude of problems by allowing this house to be built. And the house is valued, estimated to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $220,000 to $250,000. So it's not going to downgrade the neighborhood by any sorts of means.
I have a question, Mr. Johnson. You stated that the board has approved many requests like this. In what type of situations would the board not approve these types of requests?
Where it's going to create a danger or a nuisance for the neighborhood. Okay, and I can't recall when. Safety or something like that. House being too close to another structure. might be one idea, okay? But I cannot recall in my time on the board or my time with the city that we have literally turned a house down. We found a workable way to do it if we have to. We would find another variance or suggest another variance to someone, okay? I cannot recall another time that we've turned a house down.
Anyone?
Garages, yes. But houses, no.
Does anyone from the Community Development Committee have any additional questions for Mr. Johnson? Anyone from council? Mr. Snee?
Thank you, Joe. What were the violations that occurred?
We've had a rash or a multitude of violations over the time. Jason, Mr. Welsh didn't understand moving into the city that there were rules from when you move into the country that you sort of have to follow. So open burning might be one example, junk and debris, another one, driving through that vacant residential lot and dragging mud down the street, creating a driveway through there, okay? Just various things like that. Finally, was able to, Mr. Welsh had his legal counsel call my office. His legal counsel understood immediately what the issues were, and that's when we began to get this straightened out, and that's when we got the request to go to the zoning board with these variances to build a home on the lot.
Were these violations repeat violations?
No, they were consistent. I mean, I've been working with him to correct it. He'd get one corrected, and then we'd end up with another. So it's just what we do in code enforcement. We work with people rather than try to. Okay, so try to educate first.
Ms. Hardwick Smith?
Yeah, when I'm looking at variance number 3, it says the required side yard setback is 8 feet, would like it to be 4 feet from the left side of the property line. So is that, looking at this structure, is that the whole house itself is going to be 4 feet from the property line? Or is that the upstairs balcony?
That would probably be that upstairs balcony.
So the house itself would be like 8 feet and the
Yeah,
upstairs
the
balcony
balcony's going to overhang.
overhangs?
Yes,
And
yes.
so that would be 4 feet, but
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
ground
yeah,
it would be...
the house is going to be
a little less
less,
than-
yeah, it's still not going to be within the requirement, the house itself, from what we're seeing. So that's why we granted variance. So,
That seems really close. I mean, to have someone on the property line.
there's not another house on either side of it, go directly to it when you go up there. Yeah, there's not another structure that close to it, okay, per se. The
And
house
he,
is
as
still
far
gonna
as
have a
variance
lot of room.
number 2, he's just going to put the house what back farther then?
Yes, yeah, and again, I'm going by memory until I have the minutes in front of me, okay, on variance 2, folks, okay?
Yeah, so number 3, I want to know for sure that it's not the house itself that's going to be 4 feet, and then the balcony hanging over, you know where you're talking about.
Yeah, but again, when you go up Woodruff there to that vacant lot, there is not another house where this house is going to be. It's all backyards. All those houses line Lincoln Way. The home that he lives in now lines Lincoln Way. He has the vacant lot in back of him. Those are all other backyards where this house is going to be. Okay.
Mr. Canary?
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, is one of the reasons some of the issues came up is because this is one of the old city lots where it's kind of small. It's sub-size, wouldn't be approved now for the lot size.
Right.
So you kind of have your hands tied, have to allow some.
Exactly. He has his hands tied to build a house there. Habitat would have their hands tied to build a house there.
Thank you.
Any additional council members with questions? I believe there are individuals here that are appealing this decision. If they are present, if you'd like to step up to the microphone,
Okay.
present your name, address, and speak to your appeal of this decision. Is it Gerald?
My name is Gerald Grass.
Okay. If you can just step up to the microphone, please, Mr. Bass, and give us a little information why you were requesting the appeal.
You need my address?
Please.
1805 Woodruff Avenue, Northwest. I live directly across from the property in question, straight across from me. I got a written statement,
Okay.
and I made a copy for each of you, so if you want, pass them around. I'm not a very good public speaker.
That's
Not
okay.
what I
That's
do.
okay. Just talk to us your request and why.
Anyhow, the letter pretty much says it all. This guy's got a really bad neighbor. And it's been a long haul for 2 years now, which code enforcement has been involved for almost a year and a half. Mr. Johnson's great to work with, by the way, I have to say that. I've called him so many times, I know his phone number by heart. Anyhow, my main complaint was I didn't think this guy would follow the rules and regulations because he hasn't in the past. Even when code enforcement has given him written orders for what he has to do, he doesn't do it. Well, now since he's into this house thing, that situation's kind of changed. He's working hard, cleaning up the lot. And one thing is, I filed an appeal on this because we only had limited time. I mean, and he would have longer time to complete the stipulations that the code enforcement gave me. So since that time, my wife and I have come to we think we'd be better off with the house there. I think there's a much better chance of him taking care of the property and keeping it neat if it's his house where he's living. Right now, this lot is his backyard because he owns the adjacent lot to the north, and that's where his residence is. So he doesn't care what it looks like down on our end because it's his backyard. So we got to thinking, so for that reason, I'd like to withdraw my appeal of this. How the other people that appeal feel, I really don't know. I can speak for Mr. William Conte, who lives next to the property. He's against all variances, unless it would be for some medical reason, such as somebody needs to put a wheelchair ramp up, or somebody that needs it. Other than that, he's against all variation. Mrs. Sharon Rader, I can speak for her. She can't be here tonight. She is of the same mind as my wife and I. So, Mr. Harris, Mr. Jason Harris, he filed an appeal also. I can't speak for him. So, that's where I'm at, and that's all I can say about it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else this evening that would like to come and speak on this request?
Madam Chairman, I have to say on the record, I did not receive an appeal request from Jason Harris. Just Mr. Bess, Mr. Conti, and Ms. Rader.
All right, thank you. Another item under community development is the request to rezone parcel 100113008, which is located at 3725 Erie Avenue Southwest. The acreage is rezoned to 9.1 acres of the above lot. The zone request change is from E3 General Business District to I1 Light Industrial. The purpose of the rezoning is to allow for self-storage facilities. I've given this first reading at the last council meeting. We do have a public hearing scheduled for August 15th at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. I just have a couple more questions for administration regarding this request. So I don't know if Mr. Maley would like to join us or Safety Service Director. Thank you, Mr. Maley. I've gotten some concerns communicated to me regarding this parcel, which is located at 3725 Ferry Avenue Southwest. The concern is, how would you describe this parcel? Would it be described as prime real estate or some other type of parcel?
I'm not a real estate person, but I would think it's fairly decent real estate, being right next to Menards, right on the side of Aldi's. Yeah, I would say it's pretty good real estate, yes.
And looking at the acreage of this parcel, I believe it's 9.1 acres. And comparing it to all these parcels, because we do have the diagram in front of us, if we would approve this request and there is a self-storage facility placed on this parcel, in your opinion, do you think this would deter other businesses from coming to that area based on the self-storage facility?
I really wouldn't want to speak to that. I don't think it's necessarily beneficial, but it probably isn't a positive thing. I don't know how negative impact it would have. I don't think it's necessarily a positive to have self-storage there. As most of you may know, there's a AutoZone going across the street. It's not in Massillon. It's in Perry Township, a little bit farther south. And then there's a plan for Sheets to go in, I think, directly across the street from Aldi's. That is not in Massillon either. That is in Perry. The property on the other side of Menards goes in and out along that all the way down, in and out of Massillon. So there's some properties in Massillon, there's some properties in Perry. But then I think they're looking at rather larger Sheets because I think they're planning on having truck fuel, diesel fuel, and some Perry for trucks. So I do think that the area, when you see all these coming in, Sheets coming in, it's conducive to more development.
Council members, anyone have any additional questions regarding this request? Mr. McCain?
Thank you, Mrs. Kramer. I would add something to what Mr. Maley said, in that if it was reasonably priced, I think it would be a valuable piece of industrial property for a manufacturing or industrial facility, which would even be better if it were tucked away a little bit off of the main drag. So, money talks, and I know in the past they probably tried to offer this for 6-7 years ago. I remember it being almost upward of 6 figures an acre, which is just not realistic. But I think if the price were realistic, maybe close to $40,000 or $50,000 an acre, I think it would be a valuable piece of property for industrial use or manufacturing use.
Mr. Perry?
Thank you, Ms. Kramer. So that right now, this is just one of the outlots on the north side, north of Menards. So it is tucked back a little bit. In 9 acres. So Sheets is going to be on the other side of Erie?
Across the street, yes.
Okay.
It's not really tucked back in, Mr. Perry. It's really, there's an service road that goes
Yes.
along where Aldi's is, and that's the property right on the other side. So I mean, you could basically consider the fact that you have a service road already there. It's big enough to put, these 2 Aldi's plus in there, if you'd like.
So if we turn this down now, do we have the opportunity to revisit this should we have a more viable option come by later?
Well, if you turn it down now, it's still zone B3. So you can put just about everything except for industrial use.
Right.
I tend to agree, and I really don't want to pine on it too much, but I did, when I first started, that the acreage was quite expensive. I think that has been a deterrent for some development down because there's some prime lots that run right along the front there, but they do want quite a bit.
So to have that as a self-storage facility, it has to be industrial?
Yes, it does, based on our zoning code. That's correct.
Thank you for your help.
Anyone else? I guess that's my concern when this was brought to us initially, knowing that it's prime real estate, knowing that they're starting to build down there. Now, Sheets is coming, AutoZone, we have Taco Bell, we have, you know, Menards, we have Aldi's, and then we're going to use this prime parcel, real estate parcel for self-storage. And I'm looking at what's the benefit to the city? You know, is it going to generate high dollars, you know, tax revenue? I mean, that's my concern. And would you,
Totally understand you.
and that's my concern. So, thank you. Anyone else regarding that? Another item which was passed out, I don't know, Mr. Lewis, maybe you're familiar with this. Diane passed out, it falls under Community Development Ordinance number 165-2021.
I was going to bring it up at the end of the meeting.
Thank you very much. That's all I have for community development.
Thank you, Madam President.
Nothing this evening.
Health, welfare, building,
I have nothing this evening.
Parks and Rec.
I have nothing for Parks and Recs, but I just wanted to notify council that I will not be here next week. I will be out of town.
Police and fire.
Nothing from police and fire, Mr. Lewis.
Public utilities.
Nothing for public utilities. I also will not be here next Monday.
Rules and courts.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I have one older item, so what we've discussed has received 2 readings so far. Ordinance number 91-2022, an ordinance enacting Rule 25.2 of the Rules of Massillon City Council as codified in Section 121.02 Rules of Council of the codified ordinances of the City of Massillon, Ohio. The rule is to include Rule 25.2, any ordinance accepting capital budget awards from the General Assembly of the State of Ohio shall be preceded by an ordinance or resolution stating City Council's support of the project. So, as I said, we've given this 2 readings. Is there any further discussion on this item? Questions from Council, Mr. Lewis?
I'm still just uncertain of what it actually accomplishes. We cannot stop the administration from doing anything from our understanding. So they could go for a grant from the General Assembly if they so chose. We're just simply saying that they do so without coming to us first, we're going to refuse to hear it. Is that essentially what this is saying?
I'll defer to Mr. Hermkane as he's the one that proposed the legislation.
To Mr. Lewis's question, yes.
So all you're doing is flipping it. Right now, it's got to come to us one way or the other, and we vote yes or we vote no. You're just making an automatic no unless we suspend the rules allowing for it.
Yes.
So I guess at that point, to me, it seems unnecessary. I can't get behind it just because I understand the spirit of what's behind it, but there's already a safeguard in place. We already vote yes or no. This is just changing how that yes or no vote. I mean, it's not really effectively doing anything.
If I'm not mistaken, it's changing the order of how it's handled now, correct?
Correct. I think the gist of this is to make sure that we have the conversations and our support of those projects at the front end of the discussion, as opposed to, we went to the state of Ohio, we got the grant, here it is, yay or nay. These are big ticket dollar items, they're big community civic projects that we've dealt with over the last couple of years. I would like to see the conversations at the front end so that when it does get approved, then there's really no issues as to whether we're going to support something like that or not.
I guess I'm just trying to process this through. One, I think every grant we've gotten from the General Assembly, this council was made aware of the concept of the project prior to the grant being brought to us. And 2, again, it doesn't necessarily change anything. Like the administration could go for a grant, get it, come to council, and we can't stop them from coming to council and going to a committee. All they need to do is get enough committee members to say that, put it on the agenda, and then they would just basically be lobbying for people to suspend the rules in order to pass it. That's what I mean. Like, this doesn't stop or make anyone do anything. All it does is say, we would like you to come to us first. If you don't, then we're gonna have to suspend our own rules and put an extra step in. That's all it's doing. So why bother? Just let it be.
Mr. Herman?
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. My answer to Mr. Lewis would be, because I think it's important, there's a difference between being made aware of something and passing a resolution or an ordinance supporting that application. Yes, we've probably been shown a diagram or had a conversation about some of these asks in the past, but I think by putting it on the record in an ordinance or a resolution, certainly, and I don't know why they don't ask for that when they're applied to from the state of Ohio. I guess if I was the clubs, I'd want to see proof of legislative support before we awarded something $500,000, $1 million. That's it's in the nonprofit world, it's very common to see letters of support from boards or advisory committees or things like that of the organization prior to asking for a grant or with the application. Mr. Lewis is correct. It's not making anybody do anything, but I think it provides, I think it does two things. One, I think it allows the community to be involved in the discussion of some of these projects before we ask for them. And two, I think it provides an incentive to get our support before we do that. Yes, we can't make them, the administration, not, yes or no on something like that. But I think by having this rule in place, it certainly does, to me, I think it improves the collaborative spirit with which I think people want their government to operate, as opposed to take it or leave it.
Mrs. Harlan Smith?
Can you read that wording one more time?
The last section?
That, are we just requesting a notification? So really, my point is, we wouldn't really have to vote on it, yes or no, if they're applying. We're just asking to be notified, right?
Any ordinance accepting capital budget awards from the General Assembly of the State of Ohio shall be preceded by an ordinance or resolution stating City Council support of the project.
So we would be voting.
So to Mrs. Harwick Smith's point, let's take, for example, the splash pad. In that instance, before an ask was made to the General Assembly of the State of Ohio, the administration would put forth an ordinance or a resolution basically asking for council support of this project. We would have the conversation that we already had at the back end, at the front end, and then we work it all out, and then we pass or don't pass that ordinance or resolution of support, and then the application is made, and then by the time it comes, everybody's on board.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
I would just point out the theory, because not everybody will be on board. I mean, if you pass a resolution in 2021, and that council said, yeah, go get the grant, and then 2022, you have a different council, that council will say no. So again, there's a lot of ways where this rule just falls apart real fast. Because yeah, we have a resolution telling her to go get the grant, but that was one council. The new council will say, no, we didn't like that idea, and they're voted down. So again, it kind of seems like we're creating an extra step, an extra work, when really we can just turn it down when the grant comes and say, no, we don't agree with this project, don't get the grant.
Mr. Perry?
Yes and no to both. It makes sense to have the information first. That would have eliminated several of the controversial ordinances that were thrown at us after the fact. I can't believe you would resist knowing what you're voting on before you vote on it, as opposed to say, here it is, take it or leave it, which we've been thrown, I don't even know how many times since I've been on council. And we voted on stuff that the other council said they approved. You disapprove of it, whatever. Why would you resist knowing, having more information, just like the splash pad? There was a lot of discussion, there was a lot of issues with that, but we were told this is the way it has to be. But well, why didn't you say something first? We wouldn't have allowed, we wouldn't have wanted you to go seek that had you, we've had these discussions ahead of time. It just makes more sense to have the information and then vote on that instead of, oh, this is what we want, or we could do, and then, cry the blues because, oh, we can't go back and change it. Well, can we? Would we have to if we knew about it first? We'd have an argument then. I think it's a good thing. Thank you.
Just to be clear, I'm not resisting knowing before I vote. I want to be frank, I didn't say that. I believe we do need to be fully informed. And just because we get something with a full package of a grant, we still ask tons of questions and get the information. This is saying we want the information before the grant is applied for. And I don't disagree with Mr. Hurricane's spirit. There should be a full, transparent conversation prior to when the grant is applied for. There should be awareness of this council that the grant is even being applied for. I don't disagree. I just don't know if this rule is necessary. It's not. I'm not debating the merits of what Mr. Hurricane would like to see occur. I'm just debating the necessity of this rule for that.
Thank you. Ms. Harvey-Smith?
Can I ask a question to our legal counsel? Does this make a separation of like powers? We're not infringing on anything? I mean, yeah.
Good evening, council. Ms. Harvey-Smith, no, as it stands, I think I stood here last time and said the same thing. It is a council rule that affects council on how they'll receive it. As Councilman Lewis said, certainly you cannot create a rule limiting another portion of government what they can or cannot seek. They can seek anything that they like. So it's not restrictive of one of the separate powers of government, so this is kosher. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Would anybody from administration like to address this issue? Seeing none, any further discussion on council? All right, so it'll be up for a vote next meeting. We can vote how we choose. Thank you. Oh, that's the old piece I have. I would also have a new piece of legislation. Request legislation amending section 2D occupational list of class titles and ordinance 6-2018 under Department 210 income tax by eliminating the class grades 8S, 9S, and 11S and replacing them with class grades 12S, 13S, and 14S. These positions already exist as follows: tax auditor, senior tax auditor, and deputy tax administrator. See attached Exhibit A. There is not emergency language on this, so would Mrs. Kennedy-Sporon like to address council on this?
Good evening, council. Yes, this is to raise the grade levels of the personnel in the income tax department to align them more with what is out there in other departments. Being the budget director, I do get to see what a lot of the different avenues are, and for what all this department does and what all these employees do. An 8S and a 9S is a little bit low for that. I mean, they don't just process the income tax. There's a lot of legal things they need to know, a lot of tax laws they need to know. The majority of the income tax comes in now is manual, so there's thousands and thousands of pieces of mail that get processed, along with the customer service piece. We do read the refunds. We do things with the Ohio Business Gateway. So just as an example, an income tax auditor who comes in is at 8S, an administrative assistant in the city is at 12S. So it kind of aligns those responsibilities. I do want you all to know as well, I am also looking at different systems that will streamline our tax process and make it a little bit easier. If that all goes well going forward, I have 2 openings right now. I will only be filling 1. This alignment makes us competitive. I've tried to fill those openings and I've probably done 20 plus interviews. So I'm hoping for a better quality of candidate. Plus, from what they've come in now, an income tax auditor at this point comes in, if they're just at entry level at $17 an hour, you can go to a lot of fast food restaurants and make more than $17 an hour. Now, I know that our benefits are lucrative, and that is one of the things I do position, but that sometimes somebody wants to see the dollar mark too. So I think if you make us more competitive as well as get that quality of candidate up. This is no add to the budget. The money is in there now, so I am not asking for an add to any cash to come for the budget. So it is just to get the employees in the income tax department really where they need to be for what they do.
Mr. Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Great. Well, I guess that adds to my confusion then. What is the $17? What level is that?
8S.
8S.
It's the lowest.
Okay. So if they go to 12S,
1912.
and 13?
That would be the senior tax auditor, so that would be a 9S from before. That is 1746. That would go into 1965.
And
And
then
then
deputy tax.
the 11S is at 1854 right now, and that would go to 2066. That would be the entry level.
And you say that you would require more in your budget?
I need no more in my budget at this time
How can you?
because I've been down 2 tax auditors since the beginning of the year, so that has given me some flexibility. I also do, if we move forward in the way that I want to, we've done some things in the past couple of years, like, you know, you can e-file now, and we're doing some other things, looking at some other things as well. I will not need that 5th auditor in there. We can function on 4, so I would not be asking for that as well.
Well, thank you. I'm all for people, you know, having commensurate pay for their duties, absolutely. I was just curious. And in fact, you're always working short. That's hard to do to begin with. And I definitely want to see you have good candidates. It's an important part of our city and our city administration. Thank you for that conscientious feeling. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferry.
Mrs. Kramer?
So we're down 2 FTEs in the tax department
Yes.
because you cannot fill those positions, or the workload is not those 2 bodies are not needed because of your software.
Well, I have not updated the software yet, but it's something that we're looking into. So I feel comfortable as we move forward, we would be okay with 1, but not down 2. I can also tell you that I lost, the 2 that I lost either went, one went because they became administrative assistant, and it stood in the city, which is a great thing, but they were an entry-level tax administrator at 8S and had the opportunity to move to a 12S. And then one did do a lateral as well. So the 8S and the 9S is not competitive for the jobs that they do within what jobs are done in the rest of the city. But I have not implemented, I'm in the process of interviewing candidates for new tax systems. I'll be perfectly honest with you. So I'm not there yet. I feel comfortable with 4 auditors. 5. I think if we get to where we need to be within the next 6 to 8 months, is one too many, so.
So you have, so the request is 4 income tax auditors, 1 senior auditor, and 1 deputy tax administrator?
I am not asking for a definite amount of income tax auditors. Right now I have 5. Okay, I'm looking to fill 1 to, I don't have 5, it's staff for 5. I have 3 who have worked as 3 since the beginning of February. I'm looking to fill 1 right now.
The income tax auditor.
Yes,
So the request is, the goal is to have 4 income tax auditors.
yes.
We have 1 open position, 1 senior auditor.
No, we have, you can be anybody can be a senior auditor. That is a promotional, perk within the income tax department. That usually comes with skill level. It usually comes with knowledge. Right now, I have 1 senior, 1 tax auditor, 1 senior tax auditor, and 1 deputy tax administrator.
So if your request of 4 income tax auditors get proficient and they have 2 years of experience, they can all then be promoted into 4 senior auditors? Is that, if I'm understanding correctly, based on experience?
Yes, they could. I only have 1 at this point. So right now I have 1 senior tax auditor. What I'm proposing with the staffing level that I think that we can function at would bring right now to just tax auditors, not senior tax auditors.
So an income tax auditor, what's the qualifications? You stated it was an entry-level position?
Correct. I like their accounting background is organizational skills, customer service. Those are some of the things. How well you can adapt to the different tax laws out there, not just ours, but there are things that are governed by the Ohio Revised Code as well. So all of that is a learning experience.
An undergraduate degree, is that required?
No.
And for a senior auditor, what's the requirements for them? More or less experience, right?
Experience.
How many years of experience?
I'm not going to put a number on that because there are some people who can get to where they need to be in 2 years, and some people it takes longer than that. So that is really your own personal drive. So I'm not comfortable putting a year on that as well.
Just trying to get an understanding of how the organization of the tax department is, and what's the levels of promotion within and the experience. So do you always only have 1 tax deputy?
Yes.
Tax administrator?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Other questions, Mr. Hurricane?
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Mrs. Kawashi's board, what do you call this sheet? What is this called? A grade classification?
Yes.
Can you, at the next meeting, would you mind providing us, I think the only other department that we haven't touched on recently is the building department. Would you be able to provide this sheet so we can, I know we're comparing it with the auditor's office here, but there's some staff in the building department too, and I want to make sure, I'm not opposed to this, but I want to make sure that we're covering all our bases and not leaving anybody else, behind.
9S and 11S, I believe, but I will supply that for you.
All right,
Yeah.
Anyone else? Just want to clarify, so this legislation specifically is not requesting additional positions. It's just asking to change the grade on 3 positions to 3 new positions. Are those positions already filled that you're?
3 of them are. I am recruiting for 1 right now.
Okay. But you already have people in each of these?
Yes, I have 1 tax auditor, 1 senior tax auditor, and a deputy tax administrator. The deputy tax administrator and the senior tax auditor both have 15+ years of experience.
Okay. So this legislation is just changing upgrading the grades,
Yes.
giving them roughly a $2 an hour increase.
Yes. My department works very hard. I'm going to do a little rah-rah here right now. They work very hard. We actually have a summer intern helping us at this time who said today, she's amazed at the work that goes through. I mean, I'm talking about thousands of pieces of mail that come through that need to be processed. And though our e-file is done very well, it's gone up to almost 1,000 people in 2 years, which is great. These ladies work very, very hard. So I just want to give them kudos. And anybody who wants to stop down and visit us at any time, please give me a call. I'd be more than happy to take you into the department.
All right, and one final question. You mentioned that you're able to fund this with your existing budget because of you did not have positions filled.
Correct.
At this point. What do you anticipate for next year? How would this affect your budget? Do you think you're going to have an increase because of these increases?
No.
You'd be able to hang up the
Yes.
existing budget?
Yes. Because with that existing budget, it's not just the dollars for the salary, but there's always also the dollars for the health care and the retirement piece and the so the whole picture. Off the top of my head, I'll probably say, I'd say anywhere from $25,000 to $28,000 a year, which I'd be more than happy to put in the refund place spot, because that tends to be the spot that we have to come to you for to get replenished from time to time. So.
Okay. There's no further questions? Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
And we'll put this on the agenda for Monday. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Streets, highways?
Nothing new, Lewis.
All right, finance. First piece we have here is please prepare an ordinance to appropriate from the unappropriated balance of the general fund, $150,000 to accumulated sick leave, and this is to pay out sick payouts for those who are retired. Any questions this evening? Please prepare an ordinance to appropriate from the unappropriated balance of the general fund, $50,000 to arbitrator services. This is to release established funds for expenses related to legal services. Safety Service Director?
Good evening, members of council.
What are these arbitrators, was this all for our recent union contracts?
Yes, it is. In addition to that, as you know, we've had quite a few retirements, promotions that go along with that. So we've also reached out to our employment labor attorney as well for those. The contract negotiations are there. We reach out to our employment attorneys also for any employee matters or employment matters. And so does our civil service director as well.
Anybody else have questions? Mr. McKay?
Mr. Lewis, are we able to get an itemized breakdown of the law firms that we're paying and for what reason that account for $50,000 just for our own information?
Yes, we have that for us by next Monday.
Yes, we have that in VIP. I can give you totals this evening if you want to see the actual breakdown.
I just want to see who we're paying and for what reason.
The totals that we paid for so far this year, we paid $44,328 to Krugliak Wilkins. That's who does those who our employment council is. And then also to Tangus Black is $32,000 so far this year.
In the plaque, because we were going to for
In the outside council litigation.
And I guess that's what the information I'd like to see is what the outside legal counsel that we're seeking and spending money for, why it's required, or what, at least what it's for. If it's something that, because to me, in my mind, it's different whether it's a legitimate arbitration matter that we have to, or if it's a matter where there's just maybe a difference of opinion regarding our own law director's legal opinion. We pay a law director, and his opinion is the only opinion that matters. I'd like to see it, what we've been paying for the legitimate, in my mind, and what other legal fees we've been paying just to get other opinions on any matter that we're paying.
Want to see a listing of the matters?
I
So
would.
would that work that way?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
sure, we can do.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
The next was to allow the city of Massillon to enter into an agreement with Jackson, Lawrence, Perry, now Fulton, Village of Repeat City, Village of Brewster, Hillsdale, Navarre, Wilmot, for the transportation of prisoners to and from the Stark County Jail and the Massillon Municipal Court declared an emergency. We do have this on, we have a contract here. And of course, it's January 1st through December 31st. We do this every year. Is there any questions? Mrs. Kramer?
Has anything changed regarding pricing of this contract?
City Service Director? Would this be up to you?
I can give you information on these. Chief Moser could probably elaborate a little more for us this evening. But yes, there was changes in this. Basically, it was continued each year, as Councilman Lewis states the date. Some things did change once COVID happened, because with the number of transportations being down, that did change some things. So new contracts basically then were negotiated in the way that they were put into place. So now, as you read in the contracts there, it's basically $150 per transport.
With 85% going, you have 15.
15 goes into for the new vehicle, yes, and then the other portion basically goes into our general fund, which is where the expense items come out of, which is the expense for the jailer salary and basically for the jailer officer's expenses, which is in our general fund.
And why are we just not receiving benefits for this year?
Well, they've been working through this to try to come to what works out best for all of the agencies in the city of Massillon as well.
What was the previous price?
Was it previously 125? Well,
I'll let Chief Moser explain it for you.
Good afternoon. It's gone through some changes over the years. At one point, it was $135, I think, per transport. Then when COVID hit, because the number of transports went so far down, we changed to more of a percentage-based fee based off of our total costs. So for instance, last year, 2021, we took the total numbers of transports for the last 3 quarters of 2020 and the first quarter of 2021 to determine the percentage use by department. And so we gave each department then a strict figure. It wasn't a per transport, it was a specific dollar amount figure. So yeah, we've gone both ways. It was 135, then we went for contractor 2, I'm not sure, with a straight number, and now we're going back to a per transport fee of 150 this time. But our numbers are way down. That's why the rate went up to help offset some of the costs.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. This piece here is police care legislation authorizing the law director to enter into contract with the Village of Wilmot, the Massillon Department of Prosecutorial and Legal Services to the village. It's effective January 1st through December 31st, which is 1 and 2. And the amount is for $2,000. We do this for essentially all the outlying villages and communities
something that Law Director Richard started a couple of years ago. Do you have any additional information?
Just think I'll talk about the obvious with the elephant in the room. We're passing in July. We get started on these contracts with these smaller jurisdictions about September and October. Start to send them out. Apparently Wilmot has gone through a change in their leadership. We got a lot of not returned phone calls. I think we were ghosted at one point, like the kids said. But we finally got the contract, so it was held up on their part. So here we are after the 4th of July. And I believe to date we may have prosecuted 3 of the cases.
Thank you. We do have a couple of transfers here. One of them is for the auditor, transfer advance out of $2,860, putting the real property tax, and this is to realign the budget. Any questions? And then street department, reducing accumulated sick by $70,000, putting in equipment. And this is to realign the 2020 budget to have sufficient funds for expenses related to plow package. All right. We do have some old business related to what's been discussed as to the raise structure for the mayor and the auditor. That was received the reading last week, so I'll open it up for further discussion. If Mr. Lombardi and Mr. Thayer would like to begin, or how would we like to start? I figured I'd do an opportunity to discuss further.
Nothing's changed as far as since the last proposal of $84,000 annual salary at the next term, and then $90,000 at the 2028 term, and then the cost of living increase from there.
Does anyone else have any discussion they would like to have this evening related to this matter? All right. The last thing I have to bring up this evening, I was speaking with the law department this week. They vocalized that there's possibly some concerns related to the moving forward of the guest building. I did tell them that they could come forward and make a statement to council, but I do want to be clear that at this time, there is no formal matter in front of this council to take any sort of action. So I do view this primarily as informative, and obviously we have a conversation, but there is no action for council to take at this time. Law Director Richard.
Good evening again, everyone. It was brought up, I believe, or at least discussed, just potentially or primarily last week at the meeting, so we could have an update this week, kind of where we're standing. Judge Elam's here, and I will just tell you, as far as the guest building goes, Evan, do you mind passing those packets out? We prepared packets, and both, I can tell you firsthand, we have worked with, or we haven't, but the administration has worked with the judge, which he uses as a court service building, to lessen the impact of any sort of court facilities or court operations to a minimum. And we've gone back and forth and included in your packet. You will see particular designs that have been created by Jean Picard. We've got the one in red is the judges. I don't know which version of this that it was from the judge, but certainly we've engaged in good faith to trying to get this project done for the city of Massillon. As it stands, and I don't speak for the judge, but I don't believe that he has signed off on the latest plans as submitted go out to bid. I can tell you about the administration's timelines, and the funds deadline are, they have to be used by August of 2023, and I think maybe that's at 80%, but they need to be pretty much all encumbered and spent by that date. The bids, the idea is to have bids sent out July 20th. This is the administration's timeline. The bids would be back September 16th of this year. They like to start by November 1st, and they eyeing a completion date of around March of 23 for the restrooms. I basically put it in front of you all. You funded this project. At this point, I think it's incumbent of and I think it's the intention of the administration to move forward on this. But I did want everyone to be aware of where we're at. The judge has retained private counsel to represent him in this matter because we have not necessarily, the two sides, despite the law department's best tries, have not been able to get both parties to kind of meet in the middle. So are there any questions for me on this?
At this time, the way it stands for council, though, is we have, this ordinance 165 authorizing the administration to go forward with it. That's kind of where it stands with us. There's no other action in front of us. The authorizations are to be given to the mayor. The mayor goes tomorrow and put out the bid. And there's nothing stopping her. She has the authorization.
That is correct.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Mr. Perry?
A lot of questions. So this supposedly has been approved. That was the one that was kind of swept through with the whole CBD community development grant, right? It wasn't.
No, ordinance 165 specifically spoke of this building.
Okay. Well, I guess a comment that would be what this would be registered under. The Getz building, if anybody was in there a few years ago, was abandoned and neglected and basically untended by the city. The courts took it over and have spent only court money on this building. And if you please admonish anybody or encourage anybody to visit this building now, it's a jewel. It's been resurrected from the ashes, if you would, and has been is being used currently every day of the week by different committees and organizations throughout the city and even the county, and to now take this and try to basically push the system, push these people out to make some bathrooms that should have been included in the $1.5 million that we spent on the project out there to begin with, seems to me to be absurd. I see no reason whatsoever to create any more inconvenience or incur any expense in legal haggling to do this. There's much better alternatives than destroying this. And as far as putting bathrooms around the back of there in a secluded area and for noisy concerts, there's no possible way I would let my wife or children ever go back in that area at any point in time. The dangers back there, the dumpsters are back there. We have unprotected 15-foot deep window wells back there that you increase the traffic back there, you're going to increase the probability that someone's going to get hurt. I think it's extremely foolish to go forward with a plan like this that would be so both disruptive and non-productive and a waste, absolute waste of public money. And I will vote against this continue to vote against this at every turn. Thank you.
Ms. Harvey-Smith.
So I was very supportive, I mean, this was passed in the previous council, and I have mixed feelings about it. I think having regular bathrooms is very nice. You know, we do have 2 wheelchair, you know, I went down and looked at the guest building, and was very impressed with all the hard work that Judge Elam and the youth court wanted to make that a good workable building that's used every day. Moving it to the garage, to me, was like a great solution. And when they brought it forth with the new plan and with the emergency language that we needed to get this passed right away, a specific question that I asked was, are the judges and the courts, are they okay with this? And we were told, yes, that they were okay with that. I'm sorry, I'm turning my phone off. So, it's Colonel Harvey. So anyhow, I was told that they were okay. With that being said, I voted yes, because I thought everyone was happy that became a great resolution and a great solution. Then I came to find out that they were never happy with it. I guess so my question is, you know, now we're being told it's a done deal because we've already passed it. So is that the case, like when you weren't in full disclosure?
Certainly at any time, and I'm just speaking in generalities as far as your legal counsel, you can vote to repeal any law that you have voted in place. So if you, as a majority, defund the project or were to move to vote at a meeting and have legislation to do it, that I suppose answers your question. You do not. You do have a remedy.
And just to be clear, the vote that made this happen, you weren't on council for. So when you ask that question, that's not this ordinance, okay? I just want to be clear. Like, I know the conversation you're talking about, I do remember the administration did represent as if.
Well, no, it was when they came with the new bathroom plan.
Yeah,
That was when I asked that question.
Yes, yeah, I know.
And we voted for it that night.
But the ordinance that's off that is allowing the mayor to go to bid is 165.
So it's a different issue then.
It's the same issue, but slightly different.
So so the bid has to be, we have to have the bids by when?
I don't know if it's a buy. This is the administration's schedule.
The administration's schedule.
The bids, they would like them due back by September 16th.
Well, I just think that it would be, I mean, you know, maybe we do need to bring this back forward and talk about it more. Maybe there is a better resolution. You know, maybe we don't, if we have 2 handicap bathrooms in the police station that they can use for the thing, you know, and even if we still wanted bathrooms here, do we need 10, where we have, you know, 10 and then 2, so we have 12 bathrooms, do we need that many bathrooms? I mean, could we make it, have the architect still make it handicap and make it smaller, at least leave 1 full bed? I mean, are these options that are too late to look at?
To respond to that, because I have been in some of the discussions as far as trying to come to a resolution, I know that it's Architect McCart's position that the sizes and number are necessary for the amount of crowds suspected or for the capacity, and that they meet ADA standards. That's what he is representing.
But we don't have 12 porta potties out there.
Again, that's what he is representing.
I'll point out, really, just for a little bit more historical information, it's somewhat ironic, and this is different councils, so different perspectives, but when we first looked at Duncan Plaza, one of the oppositions was, well, we won't have enough bathrooms. So now we're at a point where we're trying to create enough bathrooms, and we're getting resistance from different people, and it's like, well, what is it? Do we need enough bathrooms or not? You know, in the original conversations, porta johns were not considered sufficient, so now we're going to build bathrooms, and now it's like, well, we can't build them here. You know, so it's like, I agree that there's been what I perceive as possibly some misrepresentation or misstatements at times, but at the same time, council hasn't been very consistent either in what it's requesting. So it makes it hard. Actually, no one's been consistent through this whole thing. It feels the administration has moved things around, council has moved the target. No offense to the judge, but I mean, it's more than apparent that just don't touch this building. Because originally it was supposed to be somewhere else in this building, that wasn't sufficient, so we moved it back in the building, that's not sufficient. So, you know, I'm gathering is just don't touch the building. And so now the city's gonna be in a position where we use porta johns, we have to build another structure altogether, and it's our building. So it's kind of seems like the ball keeps getting popped around, and it just needs to stop. Everybody just needs to stop and understand. We have citizens that are coming down to the end of the day, downtown. They have needs, we all have needs. And what's the problem with turning some garage space into restaurants? You know, especially when you're looking at handicap accessibility. That would be my thing. But again, like I said, we don't have any legislation in front of us. This is just no conversation. I know Mr. Sluice has some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I would like to say that I agree with Mr. Thayer and with Harvey Smith. Last term, we were told that the judges were on board, and Mr. Hurricane asked numerous times for this in writing, and we never received it. So, me, myself, I thought $250,000 was too much for bathrooms, but when we were told that the judges agreed and agreed with the project, then I felt that I should vote yes. So I did vote yes. I feel like this should be revisited. I'm not comfortable with passing this next ordinance until this is all resolved. Thank you.
Mr. LaBarge.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I somewhat agree with what's been said already. However, I think it just needs to be pointed out, this is not council's fight, okay? This is between the administration and the courts. And I don't see why we're even having these discussions. To the extent that we've been having these discussions, council's getting thrown into the middle of this and has nothing to do with us. So to Mr. Slut's point, I believe that between the court and the administration, they need to come up with a plan and then come back to us for the approval of the money, because that is our purview and nothing else as far as this is concerned.
Mr. Richard.
Thank you. To go off of Mr. Lombardi's comments, it is actually incumbent, it's ORC that says that the legislative body must provide adequate accommodations for court services. So in fact, it is a duty, it's one of the additional, also the pecuniary aspect, but to provide the court with adequate court services. So ultimately, if there were not adequate court services, Judge Young could come to the court and say he's being denied adequate services or accommodations, and it would be incumbent upon this body to provide them.
In your legal opinion, does a garage space for a community service van in the storage of holiday decorations deny a court its ability of adequate space for court services?
I mean, we're currently involved in legislation. I can tell you that our position is that it's not. We have contacted, we have the Appendix A from the United States Supreme Court, which has addressed these things. Believe it or not, there's very few cases about community service garages, so it may be a new area for the court to decide, but we've not been able to find where most of the time we're talking about actual corporate facilities, gavels, and podiums. We're not talking about garages.
And wasn't it just a few years ago that the engineering department parked vehicles in that same garage?
To my knowledge.
And now they're not able to, or somehow they vacated that space and not the court utilized it.
I'm not going to, I would defer to the judge. He works well with all departments, so I know that they either acquiesced and let him. It was not.
Yeah, I don't think it was like a hostile date.
It was not. It certainly wasn't hostile.
It was an agreement of some sort, yes. So I don't know. Right now we don't have anything. I just wanted to make sure we all were brought up to speed about it in case something else develops.
Well, I agree with Mr. Richard that I think it previously mentioned here, I think it's in our best interest to bring this up for a vote and to rescind that original and let the court do the court and the city do the city. I would not deny, nor would anybody else, that the city owns the building. That's never been disputed as far as I know. But what they do with the buildings after they promise to somebody and then yank it out from under them, I don't think is right. I don't think it's in any way, shape, or form ethical, again, it's just not right. To have somebody make those improvements like that for no cost to the city, and then again, when they disrupt all that, and if you can say it's not being disrupted, but it's going to be disrupted no matter how you do it. I think it's foolish, and again, waste of time and money. And I think if we would just rescind that ordinance about that grant and let the city find its own way. Again, I believe heartily that this should have been addressed when the plaza was built and not after the fact. Now we have to do something. Well, again, we all said something should have been done. But, you know, like I say, why tear down or disrupt something when there's no need for it? There are better solutions. There are other solutions we haven't even looked at yet. There are portable ones that the city can purchase and use throughout the city at other events that would lend themselves so much better to the city in general than to build to tear up this building and plant them there and leave the rest of the city to benefit themselves. I just think it's a foolish waste of time and money. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're waiting to see if any legislation comes before this council. Further discussion? With that, we'll be meeting next week. Thank you.
Excuse me.
We're completed with the meeting, Claudette.
Can I just say something positive about Massillon?
Oh, sure. Sorry.
I don't know if you saw that, I think it was over the weekend, Stark County Restaurant inspected 1,000 restaurants. And they had an article, and I just want to read a couple paragraphs. I couldn't tell you why some operators follow the code and some don't, said Bethany Kukowski, Environmental Health Director for Massillon Health Department, who inspects the city's eateries. Of course, going by numbers of violations, there aren't many problems in Massillon. For the year, only 82 total violations and 12 critical violations were cited in all of the 97 eateries combined. In fact, Massillon combined numbers were astronomically superior to those in Lyons, Canton, and Stark County. Hats off to Massillon.
It is true, the Brown Derby had about as many as Massillon. I don't know if you saw it.